just to. In a coffee shop in a city, which is every coffee in every city, on a day which is every day. Hello, friends, and welcome to the 12th episode of Barista Unfiltered, a podcast dedicated to the life and times of baristas. They tell us what's brewing in their lives and work in this free-flowing and unfiltered podcast. I'm Jodie Lee.
Happy holidays, everybody. I'm Austin Miller.
We're your hosts, and we're glad you joined us again. Today, our guest is Victor Hugo Lemus. He's jingling in the background. He's a barista who lives in Lafayette, Colorado. He's going to tell us about his work as barista, his life story, which includes immigrating to the United States. Since it is the holiday season here in the U.S. and around much of the world, we are going to have us a holiday sing-along, and there will be much merriment. This is going to be a show for the ages. Before we get into Victor's interview, I want to announce the name of Austin's fuzzy little chick. 2018 has been the year of Queen. And if you haven't already seen Bohemian Rhapsody, get with the program, people. You still got a week or so to really feel the joy and awe of that film. In the year you were meant to feel it. So we're naming our chickie Freddie Mercury. Wind him up, Austin. Let's watch the
Whoa! He fell, but he's not hurt.
There he goes.
He's doing all right.
Ayo.
Ayo.
Ayo. All right, that's about as silly as we can deal with that chicken. Okay.
Wait, here he goes. One more time. One more
Okay.
little dance. Well, no, he's not dancing right now.
He'll be reemerging for the holiday sing-along. All right, let's get busy with meeting our friend Victor.
Yes.
Good morning, my dear.
Good morning, Jodie.
It's so good to have you on the show.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Tell me what you're drinking this morning.
Well, we're drinking a shaker, which Jodie introduced me to. It's very delicious. I don't know.
He doesn't even know what he's drinking.
I don't know exactly what it is.
Let me show it to you folks on the
But
YouTube.
I know it's delicious, and I've been gulping it down.
Which is the problem with the shaker. All right, we started with the Holiday 2018 Carborough Roasters blend. And I discovered this beverage in Sarasota, Florida. I was just there last week, and this guy said, let me make you a shaker after I'd had a couple iced lattes. Now, here's what he does. It's a typical iced latte, but instead of leaving the ice in the drink so that it melts and makes you miserable, he shakes it like a cocktail. So the coldness gets distributed evenly through the drink, and the milk is actually getting a little froth action in the shaking. And then he strains the ice and gives you this frosty dessert beverage that just you cannot drink fast enough.
It
is like
addicting.
Yes, it's like mainlining coffee. So that's the warning we're giving you. We're also going to tell you it's the yummiest thing in the world. Have you ever had that before, Austin?
Yeah.
I've never had that before. So it has no ice in it now at this moment?
Exactly. But it is like super cold.
Yeah. And we're in
So it's like a coffee martini almost?
Yes, it tastes just like, some sort of cocktail thing that you would get. But here's the thing, I slowly sip coffee. I don't really gulp it. And so I never feel like the coffee high suddenly.
Okay.
I just feel it come on like slowly waking up. This thing is like 2 seconds later, you're like, woo, I'm ready to go. So if you're getting coffee on the go, this is the way to do it. And I imagine you could do it if somebody gives you a nice latte, you could just like shake it up real hard and then get rid of the ice and you'd have the same thing. So.
It sounds delicious. I got to try this.
It is. What are you doing? What are you drinking for coffee?
I'm now drinking Spike's House Blend. See the bulldog?
Yeah.
And I also had a cortado this morning. So that's kind of my regular, actually, before we go on. So I didn't drink any like kind of holiday drink or anything like that. Although I have had a couple of eggnog lattes this year, like little tiny eggnog lattes. They're really good. I prefer it with whiskey.
Tired, Austin. You want to tell everybody what's going on with you?
Yeah. So last night, so basically I live in a gay version of Bourbon Street. Or if anybody's ever been to the Castro, like I live in the Castro. So there's a lot of bars here and they were all having their holiday party last night, which means they were giving out free drinks. So I went to one bar called The Mix. They were giving out free drinks there. And then I went to 440 and they were giving out free drinks and Roombas there. I didn't get a Roomba, but I got like several free drinks. So I was up kind of late last night.
It looks like it.
That's sounds like a great
But
night to me.
I didn't want the Roomba anyway.
I slept 9 hours. How about you, Victor?
Yeah, I slept my full
9 hours,
9.
so-
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I'm doing good.
So our listeners know who to pay attention to now.
if I'm seem like a little slow this morning, you guys know why now.
We get it now. All right. For those of you who are listening, just to the audio version of the podcast, you need to hit the YouTube and see Victor's ridiculous elf presentation. He's got jingle bells. You'll be hearing them in the background, and we're all dressed festively today. Okay, back to Victor. Tell us about your life as a barista. How'd you get started in the coffee industry?
I started working at Spruce Coffee Confections.
In Boulder?
Yeah, in Boulder. And it just, I mean, I didn't even apply for the barista job, actually. I applied for a different job there. And then they were like, hey, we actually need a barista.
Mm-hmm.
You want to jump in as a barista? And I was like, I've never done this before. Like, is that okay? And they were like, yeah, like, we'll teach you. And so I started there with some very good people, Christy and Philip Yakish. They're still there.
Mm-hmm.
And they pretty much hold down the fort there. But yeah, that's how I started.
And at the time, were you a coffee drinker or were you totally new to all of it?
No, so I was a coffee drinker. And I started drinking coffee at the place that I work at currently right now, which is Otis Craft Collective now, formerly Proper. And I started going there when Cody, the owner, started running the place back in like 2012. And since then, my addiction grew. And my parents also love the place. So we've always just been like the group of people that like have been loyal to, I guess, Cody's coffee shop.
And you're morning drinkers.
Yeah, we're definitely morning drinkers. Yeah.
It's
So-
not uncommon to see the three of them, his mom and dad and Victor, come in and sit and have a little coffee together. It's super precious. And they're all such sweet people.
And so did you move away to Boulder, like to go to school or something?
Well, no, I wasn't going to school then. I just lived there for a bit with some friends.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Boulder and Lafayette are about a 15-minute drive from each other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, I'm thinking this is like a big, like far away place.
No, and people drive cars here. There's not everyone's depending on public transportation. So 15 minutes in a car is nothing to people that live in Boulder and Denver. Like that's totally normal to them.
It's not normal here. Like
I know.
Oakland might as well be in another universe, to us in San Francisco and vice versa.
Yeah.
We don't travel like 7 miles here.
I know. That's why I'm trying to make sure you understand this. It's normal here. All right. We also want to talk about the fact that Victor has an important supportive role here with Barista Unfiltered. He was one of my serious guiding lights in the process of launching this podcast. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
I do.
Do you want to talk about it? Do you remember the story well enough to tell it?
So Jodie came in one day and she was like wanting to start a project, but she didn't know exactly what type of direction she wanted to head. She knew she wanted to do some type of barista type focused podcast, I guess. But she hadn't started anything, she
Didn't even have a name.
yeah, there wasn't a name. And then I was like, all right, Jodie, you got to do this today. You got to go sit down. You got to write down some names for the podcast. And then so Jodie did write down some names that day. And then she presented those names to us who were working that day. And then we kind of we were just very supportive.
Yeah.
And it finally happened.
Yeah, I've been kicking it around for months, and I'd already talked to Austin about it. He was excited. We just didn't have a name, and like so many things, you walk into a coffee shop with something on your brain, and the person behind the counter goes, "Hey, what's happening with you?" And you just let it out, and then sometimes they just give you a blank stare, and you can't blame them.
I've been guilty.
And sometimes they just give you exactly what you need. And Victor I don't know, there was something about the way he was looking at me that morning. He was like, "Go sit down and do that. Like, that's what you're doing this morning."
I was very inspirational that morning, I guess.
Totally. And I sat down and did it. I remember the seat I was sitting in when I made the list. It wasn't my usual seat. I sat somewhere else, and I sat down and wrote it all up. And I had two, I don't remember what the other name was, but I had two that I was really happy with. And we liked Barista Unfiltered. Yeah. So thank you.
Great. Yeah.
Thanks, Victor. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this sort of brings me to, I want to talk about Victor more personally. And I want to give a little context to this. I'm from Chapel Hill, and, I've had the good fortune of being around a wide range of people in age and in nationality. And I feel like the more different a person is for me, the more I have to learn. So I was in her 80s. I had a neighbor named Vera Hart. She's now 99-year-old. And I guess she'll probably hear this podcast at some point. But so my 99-year-old friend Vera, way back in, her 80s, always used to tell me that the best exchanges are ones where it's no big deal what you're offering to another person that another person actually needs pretty desperately. And she advised me so many years ago that those are the arrangements to seek out. And the reason you seek them out is because if something is no big deal for you to give, then you'll give freely and you'll give frequently. And what I've discovered in sort of applying that advice over the years is that she really did point me in a direction to open my perceptions so that I think of giving as being just this easy habit, this thing that I do. And Victor and I have a very casual friendship. We over coffee orders, and we giggle a lot together. But I've never said any of this stuff to him directly. I just feel it all the time when I'm around him. He has a real giving nature, and he's affable, pleasant, and just kind to everybody. It's not just me, it's everybody I see him interact with. And so I'm really curious about this. And I want to know, were you born that way? Is this something that you're mindfully developing in yourself? Do you even know you're a giver?
No, I definitely, that is something I definitely try to put across whenever I do interact with people. And that was not always giving. I think most of the time we're born a little selfish, especially like if for me, my brother was born 7 years after I was. So there was a huge gap there. So I was very used to having things to myself and, being selfish. And when I was younger, my brother and I, we like clashed a lot because I just didn't understand that this other little guy needed like my parents' attention or just more of my parents than I did. And definitely, that's something I developed more in high school as well. I think high school was the time where I really developed that giving part of me. And I definitely tried to make it a focus throughout my high school. I don't know why. I just kind of like decided that it felt better for me and for other people. It was always a better interaction when you're giving, when you're giving, it's just way better outcomes and experiences. And that's like your friend Vera has said. That's what I found out, and that's what I hold true. So I definitely try to push that in every relationship I have.
So what did you do in high school to kind of develop that? Like, did you join groups or?
I was very involved in high school. Yes. I was part of a restorative justice group. I was like this thing they called the link leader, where you introduce like 8th graders that are coming onto high school and you help them with that transition throughout their freshman year.
Yep.
I was very involved. I was captain of my soccer team. So yeah, I was super involved throughout high school, and I feel like all those roles that I played there definitely helped develop those giving skills.
Yeah, and some leadership skills, it sounds like. And I think those two things go hand in hand. If you've got a giving leader in charge of something, like it doesn't matter what you're doing, it's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, like that giving mindset.
Yeah, it's
in a role of power, that is where everybody I think shows up with their energy.
exactly. It's a thriving environment when people see someone that's leading and they're giving out, they're also kind of invited to also give as much as they can, and that just makes for great outcomes.
Was there some, like for me, it was watching Vera and my mother. I mean, there's plenty of giving people in my world growing up. Is there one person that kind of you think of that helped you develop that in yourself?
I guess my parents would be the most. They've always have taught me as well to be like very giving, and just like, yeah, I don't think it was any one person. I think it was like my parents definitely had the foundation laid out for me. But yeah, just people I've met throughout my time that I see that are very giving. There was this. So my mom works at a laundromat as a cleaning lady, and when I was in middle school, I had to go over to my mom's job because she couldn't find a sitter. So after school, I would stay there until she finished work. And between that time, there was this man who came in. His name's Don Eldhart, and he was the treasurer for CU at the time. And he came in to wash his clothes, and I used to do homework while I waited for my mom to finish. And he used to come in, wash his clothes, sometimes with some food. And I think I was like this little like 11-year-old who was also hungry sometimes. So I would like go over to him and be like, "Hey, what's that you got there? You know, what you eating there?" Like, you know. And the guy was just very, very nice, and he would like after a while we developed a relationship through that, and he would start helping me out with my homework, and from that time on, he's still a very close family friend. He helped me start like soccer. He put me on a team when I was like 13 years old, and we're still very close friends, and that's another person that I would look to.
Yeah,
because he's very giving. Him and his family are just very giving people.
He sounds like a very nice person. And I feel like, if you're lucky to have a family of origin that's giving, that's fantastic. But on some level, you're like, well, I mean, my parents are supposed to love me. Like you kind of grow up with that. Like they're supposed to give. But when you meet somebody outside of that circle, who's behaving like a mentor to you, that you're like, wow, I must be special. That's what happens. Like you start thinking, and when someone treats you with that kindness, it works on you in a different way, and
it really does. And I think that's the thing. I guess now that I really think about it, Don is definitely one of those figures, because he was not only like a mentor, or has been a mentor these past few years, but he's also been like a grandpa to me, because in a way he's like giving me all these experiences that I never would have had. And my grandparents are also not in the state, so I did not have that relationship before.
That's awesome. Austin?
I'm sure that also like you were probably like this really cute kid, and he saw you, and you probably like kind of connected to something that he needed without even realizing it, so that like you guys were saying, like you give something that doesn't feel like anything to you, and you were probably doing that without even realizing it,
Yeah, I used to work for the National Longitudinal Study for Adolescent Health. Whew. We called it Ad Health because the days were long already. But anyway, I remember sitting through a presentation. I don't remember which researcher did this talk, but I mean, you could find it, and maybe I'll find it and post it in the links. But the idea was about mentorship. We studied all kinds of things about the teenagers in the U.S. and as they grew up into adulthood, and we studied their grades and where they lived and how successful their marriages were and how much money they made and all that. But anyway, the point was, when it came to mentorship, kids who were more likely to avoid drugs, get a higher education, and get a good job, and report happiness and less depression and better sleep, all of those indicators, when you track that back to their ability and access to a mentor, it only took one mentor in their life, not a person you saw every day, but I think the thing was you had to have contact with that mentor once a month. I mean, it is such a small thing that you need to do to impact somebody's life like that. And I have lots of little cousins in my family. I don't have children, but I spoil all of the little cousins in my family like a mentor should. And I've done that forever anyway. But when I heard that research, I realized like how powerful it was what I was doing.
Yeah.
And that it's just a small thing, like it's a text. So if you're listening and there's somebody in your life like that you could impact, I really hope that you'll just send a text today and know that text has so much power. It's not a small thing. It's a small thing to you, and it's a large thing to someone else. Yeah.
And I think we all have, like, Victor was talking about earlier, how he was remembering back to his childhood and when he was like selfish as a child with his brother. And I think we all have that selfish child in us that we're always trying to like kind of like move past. So when you do something like that as a mentor, and if you're giving to someone else, you're also like kind of banishing that part of yourself that you don't really like so much. And I think everybody has that in them and everybody has that feeling. So we can all relate to what Victor was saying earlier.
Absolutely. I was shitty to my little brother.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I know my brother listens to this podcast, so he'll probably be like, yep.
I called it instilling character in my brother.
That's a positive spin.
Yeah.
Sorry, Will. But thanks for
We love all our little brothers.
Okay, well, when we were tossing around ideas for this podcast, Victor and I, he said he wanted to talk about his crazy family and his journey to the United States. So let's get into your personal story if you're ready.
Yeah.
Okay. Where'd you get your start in this life?
So I was born in Mexico City, and part of Mexico City, the name is Iztapalapa. It's a mouthful. But yeah, that's where I was born. And I lived there till about the age of 5. I have very few like lasting memories from my time in Mexico City. But I have some very, very dear memories from there. And then I immigrated to the US when I was about 6 years old. And that process was, I had no idea what was going on. I thought we were going on vacation, and it turned out we were going like a forever vacation. So yeah,
Wow.
this 6-year-old kid, and actually my mom and my dad were already here in Boulder. My dad had been here for about 4 years, and my mom had been here for about a year before I came over. So I lived a year in Mexico with my aunt before I came over. And when I finally did come over, yeah, I had no idea what was going on. Like, I knew I was going to see my parents, and so that kind of like made me very happy. But at the same time, I was like, I had to talk to all these strangers who I didn't know what they had to do with me, but they were the people that were getting me across. And I was very fortunate to not have to walk the long distance through the desert. I actually arrived through a checkpoint with 2 other women who like acted as my parents, or one of them acted as my mom and one of them acted as my aunt. And when we got to the checkpoint, the immigration officer at the checkpoint asked me if one of them was my mom, and I answered no. And like that to those ladies was probably like, they were probably freaking out, you know?
Yeah.
So, but everything turned out fine. The guy didn't question anymore. And, you know, we went through, I got to a safe house in Los Angeles. And from there, I took a plane to DIA and reunited with my family.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And Victor, do you remember all this, or do you remember it like through having it retold to you?
No, I remember it pretty well. I was 6 at the time, so yeah, I remember like all of it. I remember like sitting down in the back of a pickup truck, like, you know, riding across the highway through like by the ocean, because I went through like Baja California, I think. That's where I entered through. And this was all pre 9/11, so like the border security and stuff was not as like, you know, they weren't cracking down too hard, I guess. So it was a little easier. But yeah, that's how I made it over here. So how did you guys get here?
Born into it, right?
A lot of crying and screaming.
Yeah.
Screaming and crying, and ancestors that did the same thing that you just described.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sure they have stories, but I'm so far removed from it. But I would imagine if you went back and like talked to my ancestors, they would have some pretty crazy stories about how they got here and stowed away in the bottom of a hold of a ship or something else crazy like that.
My ancestors would have that story and the story of the Native Americans, you know, the tribal people who lived here who just were slaughtered and massacred by these new settlers. So, yeah. We all have common ancestry, and, you know, we should just stay focused on that.
Yeah.
Here's the question I have. Like, so you're 6 years old and you're doing all this traveling. How long did it take you? And can you describe like the transportation process? Like, was it all vehicles? Like, what was the walk like? How did you get food?
Yeah. So, yeah, as a 6-year-old, like the time conception of how long it took, it wasn't really there for me. I was just, it felt like an eternity to me as a kid, but I'm sure it was only like a month or something, you know?
A month is a long time for a 6-year-old to travel unattended.
Yeah. And yeah, it was mostly by car from Mexico City to like the town that I flew in Mexico again to get near the border. That was like probably the easiest thing. And then I think we stayed for like a week there, me and 2 other of my cousins who were with me, which I also came with, but they were much younger. One was still like 1 year old, and the other one was like 3.
Mm-hmm.
And they also had no idea what was going on. I mean, so we stayed with these people for about a week there, and then a week later, these 2 women arrived, and they said, "Look, we're gonna act as your mom and your aunt," and like we did this overnight. They crossed us through the checkpoint overnight, so I feel like that was the only guy working that night, like through the checkpoint that we went. It must have not been like a very big checkpoint, I don't feel like, because yeah, there wasn't much activity going on, and it was like pretty late at night. So I feel like when we got to the checkpoint, I feel like we were the only vehicle there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we got through there, and then we went off, and we stayed at a safe house in LA once we crossed over. And we stayed with a family there with 2 other children. And at that place is where I was first introduced to a peanut butter jelly sandwich for the
Yeah.
first time.
Yeah.
And I remember just spitting it out. I just spit it out because I had no notion of what peanut butter was, and I just hated the taste of it. I didn't like it, so I just spit it out. And we stayed there for about like 3 more weeks. We watched like they were very nice people. I watched like Looney Tunes and just played around their backyard. And we went to a park once, like in central LA. And yeah, it was like I was a kid, so like it was just like very innocent, like, you know? Like I just went along with it because I knew at some point I would see my parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And were you like, did they like wind you up like before you were crossing the border? Did they prepare you and say, oh, you need to behave in a certain way, or sort of like coach you? Or
they didn't even explain that. So I was, yeah, like I felt like if they would have explained it, I would have, they could have like persuaded me to tell the guy that, look, these are like some type of family members, instead of just telling the guy no, because I feel like that was the riskiest part of that process. So
as far as you knew, this was just another normal moment as you crossed the,
exactly.
the border.
just answering honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Just very, very kid-like. Yeah, answering everything honestly and just
And also, how do you feel about peanut butter now?
My views have changed on peanut butter. Yeah, I enjoy it with jelly.
So these two women that are traveling with you, did you get the feeling they had done this before? Like this?
Yes. Actually, one was pregnant at the time. So it was one woman and one pregnant lady in the passenger seat, and yeah, they definitely had done something like this before.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, how did your parents choose Boulder?
My dad had friends here,
Okay.
who he knew from back home. He was actually from a small town in the state of Puebla, which is southeast, about like an hour and a half drive from Mexico City, just outside of it. And yeah, that's where he grew up. He grew up like in a farm type deal. And then he moved to the city when he was like around 17. And my parents had me pretty young. My mom was 21. My dad was like 23. So yeah, they were very young parents. And my dad left Mexico City to go to the US when I was like about a year or 2 years old. And then he just, through friends, he came to Boulder.
Do you think
and he'd always planned to get you to join him at some point?
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like that was the plan. It took him like 4 more years to get my mom over there, and then like 1 more year later for them to also bring me. Yeah.
And so your brother, he wasn't alive at the time.
No.
He didn't happen, and your brother didn't come along until you got to Colorado.
Yeah, 2001.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. That's an amazing story.
It's a ride. Yeah.
So I want you to talk about your parents a little bit, because they are super precious people. I wish we had like a photo of them.
I should have brought a photo.
We should have done that. But like I said, they're just this adorable couple. They come in even without Victor sometimes, and they come and have like a couple pastries and a coffee and just sit and talk to one another. What's your relationship like with them?
Right now it's great. It's like definitely, I think my parents and I have a very healthy relationship. We've gotten through all the like teenage drama that I had going on as a kid, and like, they no longer have to change my diaper, so that's I'm sure that helped out some. So yeah, it's very healthy right now.
They just enjoy each other's company. Yeah. You don't see many 20-year-olds hanging out with their parents, having coffee. That's what's so special about it.
Yeah, we try to get like once a weekend, one time out of the week. We try to definitely sit down together, just talk to each other. Yeah.
All right. Well, in addition to working at Otis as a barista, you're earning an undergraduate degree at Front Range Community College. Tell us what you're studying and tell us a little bit about how you're balancing school and work.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a degree as like either a math or a computer science major. And at Front Range right now, I'm just completing some credits and just getting some general courses out of the way, and then hopefully transferring over somewhere in Denver or possibly CU Boulder as well. Um, and it's definitely been an adjustment to balance work and school at the same time. Um, all things considered, the semester went pretty well for me, so I'm happy about that. But yeah, it was definitely more stressful, and definitely I had to get better at time management for sure.
How much are you working? Like how many days a week?
Well, when I was in school, I was only working 2 or 3 days a week, and then I was going to school 2 days a week. And then between that, everything else that's that goes
That's
on.
a lot.
Yeah.
And then you're playing soccer.
Yeah. Just recreationally on Sundays. Yeah. Not as frequently as I used to play when I was younger, which was like every day. I either had like practice or a game every day of the week.
Yeah. Well, also, when I was checking out your Facebook page, I noticed we have a friend in common.
Yes.
And it really, this one surprised me, and it might surprise you. It's Reese Beeler.
Yes.
So I've known Reese for about 8 years. I think he's listening to the podcast these days because I ran into him a couple weeks ago. His mom, Susan Bateman, was one of the first people I met when I moved here in Colorado, and she helped me tremendously as I started networking my business. That whole family is adorable and wonderful. They're great people. How do you know Reese?
Yeah, so we went to high school together.
At Centaurus.
Peak to peak.
At Peak to Peak. Okay.
Peak charter school. Yeah. He was a grade below me, and yeah, he's a great guy. I ran into him recently as well.
Yeah.
At Otis, and yeah, I've known him since then. His sister was in my grade.
Sky.
Yeah. And that's how I know them. And Sky and I, we had a close group of friends in high school. We were in the same friend circle, you could say. So yeah,
funny.
that's how I know them. And yeah, and Reese, yeah, he's a phenomenal guy.
Yeah.
I think he was doing like a master's or something at CU, which is just the energy and like just the amount of work he's probably doing is just
Yeah, I've seen him at coffee shops. I just run into him occasionally, sometimes in Boulder, like most recently in the Otis. But if you look at the stuff he's working on, it's completely unintelligible.
Yeah.
But you were studying math and computer science, so you're headed down that nerd path too.
I guess I
am. Yeah. Holiday time is upon us.
You can feel the Christmas news tightening, as that one Christmas movie says.
I don't know that Christmas movie that says that.
What is that? It's that one movie. It's like it's a little old, like from the 80s or something.
That's not old.
Okay.
That's really old. That's really old. Let's be real.
He has a pink bunny pajama.
Oh, what is that?
About? And he wants like this gun for Christmas.
I think it's called
Christmas Story.
Christmas Story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the movie that we all learned, not to put your tongue on the frozen post.
Right.
Or definitely try it. It might not happen to you, right? Well, what are you going to do to celebrate?
Family. I'm a very family-oriented person. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, probably spend time with the family, catch up with the cousins. Yeah.
Do you have a certain food that you eat every single year, the same kind of thing, or does it change around?
Yes, tamales. Mm-hmm. Tamales is usually what we do for Christmas, and my mom is getting ready to knead the dough, I guess, for the tamales. And
what do you put it? What kind of tamales?
I mean, she does everything with my aunts. They do like green pork, green chili pork. They do like chicken. They do raisins and pineapple for the kids. Um, yeah, just all sorts of tamales. Yeah, very delicious.
I love tamales. I don't,
Mhm.
anything
I'll-
you do with them.
Yeah,
good.
we'll probably have extra, so I'll bring you some.
Sign
Yeah.
me up. I'm good for that. Well, when I mentioned we were having Victor on the show this week, he said he really wanted to jazz it up and make it a holiday special, which of course I said, yes, let's do that. So one of the first tunes I learned on my ukulele is Feliz Navidad, and I use it in a million ways. It's great for simple parodies, and I'm forever creating new lines that fit this tune. It's the first song I memorized on ukulele, so I think it's perfect for us to play and sing, and we're going to sing it in its original form.
Can I say something real quick before we start singing?
Yes.
I'm going to do you guys all a really big favor. I'm not going to sing. But Freddie Mercury is going to be over here dancing, and I'm going to facilitate that. And so I think if you want to see Freddie Mercury dance, you should look on our YouTube channel. And while you're looking at our YouTube channel, you subscribe, because we're trying to get to 100 subscribers. So do us a Christmas solid and go on and subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch Freddie Mercury dance.
All right. Are we ready?
Yes.
Here we go. What? Is he ready? Is Freddie Mercury ready to go on stage?
I don't know. He's like, I don't know. He's feeling tired. But we're gonna make him dance.
Okay, that sounds good. Ready?
Yeah.
Here we go. Hit it. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año y felicidad. Feliz Navidad.
Hey.
Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año y felicidad. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. We wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. We wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of our hearts. We wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. We wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. We wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of our hearts. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Before we
Christmas.
wrap up, we want to hear Victor's favorite 3 coffee shops.
All right.
You got some ideas?
Yes. I recently traveled to New York. There was this coffee shop called Saints in downtown Manhattan, which was very delicious. I definitely grabbed the bag from them. And then here in Colorado, even though they don't make the best coffee, Trident Coffee Booksellers is just a great place to go in and work, and it has a great vibe to it. You could say it's very nice to go do work there.
It's in
And
Boulder.
sometimes it's like the atmosphere is just as important as the coffee.
Right.
It really matters, So like sometimes it's not always about having the best coffee in the world, but sometimes a place can have the best vibe in the world, and that's enough.
Yeah, and I've had great like memories there as well. So that's another reason why I like Trident. And then of course Otis Coffee Shop. You guys have to check it out. That's where I currently work, and that's where I first got my introduction to coffee. So that coffee shop will always hold a place close to my heart.
Yeah. And Otis is one of the newer coffee shops in this area. Like the Trident was, I don't know how old it is, but when I first got here in 99, like my first visit to Boulder, it was there. It's on the west end of Pearl, and it's gems. So if you're in this area, go check out Trident for sure. All right. Austin, you got anything else before I make comments?
I just want to thank you for hanging out with us today, Victor. It was really a pleasure meeting you.
It was a pleasure meeting you, Austin. Thank you.
Yeah. And as we end the episode, we always want to thank our guest, Victor Hugo Lemus, for being with us today. And thank all you listeners for joining us. We want to hear from you guys. So if you have an idea for the show or want to send us any of your big thoughts, our email address is info@baristaunfiltered.com. We're all over the internet, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Thank you for everybody who's subscribing to us on YouTube. We're getting closer to that goal of 100 subscribers, and we appreciate you bunches. If you want to give us another Christmas gift, in addition to subscribing, we need thoughtful reviews on Apple's iTunes podcast app. That's what helps us get noticed out in the world. So if you have time to write up just a couple sentences that are unique and not like, hey, it's awesome, but like something meaningful, that's apparently important. We've got a couple podcast patrons now through Patreon. So if you want to join those cool kids and support the podcast, you can find us at patreon.com/barista-unfiltered. You can donate in any amount or on any schedule that works for your budget. We'll wrap up. I'm Jodie Lee.
And I'm Austin Miller.
And we want y'all to stay caffeinated, and till we see you next time. Bye.
Bye.